Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, small town life can be not without its challenges, and if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean that you're in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and conversational fashion. And if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to assume that you do, because let's face it, you're listening right now. And if you are, please keep listening. And subscribe. Hit the subscribe button, give us a 5-star rating on your podcast provider of choice. We're available pretty much everywhere. Places like Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, and plus we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we'd absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, the Letterboxd, the TikTok, the Blue Sky, the Threads. We're pretty much everywhere at In the Seats for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats. InTheSeats.ca for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because guess what? If we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it all that much more when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please do us that ultimate kindness. Come on by and pay us a visit. We'd really love it. On this episode, we're diving headfirst, as we always do, into some glorious Canadiana, which is opening this coming Friday at select theaters across our fair country. It's a film called Sweet Angel Baby, and it's the story of an unassuming young Newfoundland woman whose online persona strains her community relationships after it becomes exposed and knowledge to the small town that she lives in. It's one of those stories that we've seen before, but one that's also very relatable at the same time as, people try to conduct their own lives, but also get up into this business simultaneously at the same time. It's a fantastic movie. It's starring Michaela Kraminski, Elle-Máijá, Tail Feathers, Peter Mooney, a few other great actors, and it's written and directed by the one and only Melanie Oates, who we had the unique pleasure of sitting down and talking with and talking about the origins of the film, getting it made, working with these actors, and just the nature of it all, and just allowing the cream to rise to the top in this crazy business of show that we're all in, especially when you're Canadian. But she's definitely on the right path here because this is a fantastic film. So go check out your local listing for Sweet Angel Baby. If you're in Toronto, I'm pretty sure it's playing at the Carlton here in downtown Toronto. But otherwise, enjoy our talk with writer director Melanie Oates, because between you and me, it's a pretty darn good one. Obviously, congratulations on the film. I
You.
really enjoyed it, and I mean, just congrats on the work.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. Thanks. I'm very excited for people to actually be able to see it now.
Now, I mean, I'm kind of curious, what was sort of the inspiration for it? Because I mean, I used to live in a small town, and I mean, this is
Yeah,
kind of the story that makes me not want to live in a small town.
I know. Yeah, that's a tricky bit, isn't it? Not doing any favors for rural branding. Yeah, so the idea of the story sort of came from two separate threads. The one more like surface level was in 2014 when I started writing the movie. I sort of had an acquaintance here in St. John's who had a similar sort of thing as Eliza, where she got really famous on Instagram for posting these like incredible
Right.
provocative photos. And yeah, that was just really interesting to me, living in a small place and then, going outside and knowing that people have seen it and how that affects your interactions with people. And also like the urge to do it and then the boldness to follow through, because that was something that like I could not relate to, was like, actually the gumption to go ahead and do it. Um, yeah, and then the other sort of more personal thread was when I was in my early 20s, I started publishing like some short fiction, just like in local magazines and stuff. And yeah, I got sort of not such a great reception from the people in the town where I grew up. They sort of saw the characters in the story as me. And I think it really like tainted their view of me and as a person, and sort of changed my relationship with home for a while. So that was yeah, that was the other side of it.
These characters are so layered. I mean, particularly Michaela and Elle-Máijá's characters, and I mean, they both give great performances. I mean, can you talk to me a little bit about, I guess, finding the right actors for the right part? Because I mean, again, this goes so beyond sort of what you would think the stereotypical would be of a story like this. Like, there's really
Mhm.
layers. Like, we really get to know these people.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that. I'm glad that's how it comes across. But yeah, Michaela, I had seen in Firecrackers when that movie came out, and I was like stunned by her in that. And so she was my first choice to play Eliza, and Elle-Máijá was my first choice for Tony. So I was like super grateful and lucky that they came on board. And yeah, I mean, just their sort of openness and vulnerability, and like they showed up with like 100% willingness to like go there on the script and to dive in and to use, you know, everything they had, like their emotions, their intellect, their bodies, and they were just so giving to me in that way. And yeah, that's something that was like so beautiful to me. And yeah, I mean, without them, with a lesser actor, it just wouldn't have worked.
Can you talk a little bit about, I guess, the visual aesthetic of the movie? Because I mean, I was really struck by just how gorgeous it was. I mean, even from sort of like framing the town to, them hiding in the dark, everything
Yeah.
really looked really gorgeous.
Oh, good. That's nice to hear. Yeah, I worked with an amazing cinematographer named Chris Mabley from Toronto. And yeah, I mean, we had Newfoundland as our backdrop, so that helps a lot. Yeah, we really wanted to highlight like the nature, and sort of the beauty in the nature of Newfoundland, but also like the harshness in the beauty of Newfoundland, and like the edges and the way the sort of ocean, um, pounds on the shore and is relentless and has that sort of tension and aggression. Um, and yeah, then to have those sort of like really intimate moments, like with Eliza in her house, being alone, and yeah, how to make it just feel really grounded and honest, in a place.
There's something about the idea of this story evolving from the idea of, okay, well, the church is going to be sold to now, oh, hey, why don't we buy the whole town? It only costs so much. It
Hmm.
feels like it's an extravagant idea, but also it's happening. It's one of those things that's
Yes.
kind of happening, especially in towns on the East Coast. Can you talk a little bit about, I guess, doing research sort of on that end of things? Because, I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of it all, but I mean, I know things like that are happening sort of every day in rural counties and small counties in the East Coast, West Coast, wherever.
Yeah, it's been happening in Newfoundland for a while. So all of the Catholic churches are being sold to pay for a lawsuit from these from an orphanage that was
Right.
called Mount Cashel, and yeah, where all kinds of abuse happened, and so the money from selling off the churches and properties is going to the survivors. Um, so that was, I mean, obviously, the survivors are owed that much, and so much more. What they lost is something that they'll never be able to get
Yeah.
back. Um, but also it's like, who the churches belong to, the community is like in the town that I grew up in. Like my grandfather helped to like physically build the church, like with his friends, they like went in the woods and cut down the trees and like brought it back and like made the church. So it's like, who really should be able to own the churches, and like, are these the people who should be paying for it? And there's not like really, I don't really have a strong stance on it one way or the other. It's like it's sort of everybody loses,
Yeah.
you know? Um, but yeah, so that sort of context, it's a good metaphor for rural Newfoundland or rural areas in general, of like, you know, what's being lost in those places.
There's something thematically in here that to me was about
sort of subtlety and then kind of the loss of subtlety, which really kind of to me equates almost the small town experience because obviously we've seen films about small towns in the past and they've had sort of the stereotypical nosy neighbor and this, that, or the other. To
Uh-huh.
me, you played this very naturalistically and very sort of subtly. How important was it for you to not sort of give a stereotypical view of a small eastern town?
Yeah, it was really important. I was trying to avoid that at all costs because um there are really wonderful people from those places. Like, my a bunch of my family still live in a small town like that. And the sort of uh moral standards and like moral oppression happens to everybody in the town. It's like not just Eliza. There's like that impacts everybody, It's like who's to say what the neighbor is not able to show or express about themselves that they have to repress.
Yeah,
And yeah, I'm just generally not interested in like black and white characters, It's like the sort of nuance that's important to me and showing that, as objectively as possible so that people can sort of bring their own interpretations to it. And I think, even though there's a lot of issues in places like that, there's also like a lot of beauty in the sort of community element and how people support each other and that side of it too. So just trying to balance it as honestly as possible.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, this is your second feature, and I mean, I'm always curious when I talk to filmmakers because mounting a feature is no small feat, obviously, and it takes time, it
Mhm.
takes a village. But I mean, I've got to know because obviously there's going to be lessons that you learned from the first one that you're like determined to, okay, I'm not going to make that mistake that I made in the first one and on the
Uh-huh.
second one. Like, how did you apply sort of the experience of number one into number two now?
Yeah, it was the approach to both of them was pretty different. I mean, in like visually, the approach is pretty different. In myself, just like being more confident, like in my voice as a filmmaker. I mean, that's something that continues to develop. I'm still like very new. But I think in terms of like working with actors, something that I learned was because you sort of if you read the books about like working with actors or like all these rules of like, don't say this, do say this, and like, this is how to be a good director. But I found in with working with actors, if I can be like as simple and straightforward as possible, like that's what works the best. And so, yeah, just figuring out like what actually helps me to do my job as well as I can, as opposed to like performing good director. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that does
Yeah.
make a lot of sense. You don't want to fake it, but you have to engender a certain degree of trust with your actors, especially on something like this, which again, I mean, there's an intimacy to it that you don't
Mhm.
want to sort of take for granted.
Yeah. Yeah. And just like I like to enjoy the experience of making a film, which like might sound so obvious, but I've worked on so many other people's films, like as a part of the crew, and that's definitely not always the case. And people could tend to be like so stressed out and burnt out and like, you know, tempers and flare-ups and all this. But I'm like, filmmaking is, I'm so grateful to be able to do it. But it's also just like one part of my life, and I want to be able to enjoy the process of it. If it has to be torture, then I'm not really interested in that.
Now, I'm curious, was directing always sort of the plan for you? Because I mean, in looking doing my research and looking up your credits, I saw some time in the costume department, and I mean, not
Uh-huh.
many people make the jump from costume to sort of the director's chair. It's a
No.
it's a unique path that you've taken.
Uh-huh. Yeah, no, I definitely wasn't always interested in directing. I mean, not that I wouldn't have been interested, just that it never would have occurred to me like as a possibility. I didn't even really like when I was growing up or as a teenager, I watched a lot of movies and loved movies, but I didn't really know what a director's job was, or like what that meant. But I was always interested in writing, and so that was how I came into it first was like writing scripts, like short film scripts. And then a friend of mine challenged me to direct one of my shorts. And then, yeah, I had been working in costumes on a bunch of TV shows and films and stuff. And so getting to spend all that time on set and actually watch directors work, watch all the crew members, know what everybody's jobs are, how it all works together was like a really great sort of practical film school for me. And then, yeah, once I directed my first short, that was it.
I love that. Everyone I get to talk to always says that, working in the industry is always sort of film school again. And I mean, I'm
Uh-huh.
curious, like for you, because I love that idea, like you said, when you were younger, not necessarily knowing what the director did or not necessarily knowing what the screenwriter did. Was there a movie or sort of a moment on set that you had where the light bulb went off and went, oh, that's it?
Yeah, I think, I mean, this is kind of random, but when I was a teenager, there was this show on CBC. It only had one season, but it was called Hatching, Matching, and Dispatching. It's a hilarious show. I think you can watch it on Prime or Crave or something now. It's worth a watch. It's like hysterical. Um, but Joel Thomas Hines, who is an actor from Newfoundland who was in my first film, Body and Bones, he was in that show and he grew up where I grew up. And he was older than me, so was long gone by the time I was a teenager. But I remember seeing him in that show, and he was also a writer on the show. And it just occurred to me like people from here can like
Right.
be on TV or like make TV. Like I didn't even understand that people in Newfoundland made TV or movies, you know? And so it took me a while after that, but I think that was like the initial sort of like door creaking open.
Well, I love that. A Canadian independent filmmaker sort of referencing Canadian TV as an influence and inspiration. That to me, that's pure CanCon. I love that.
Yeah.
Now, I just to start putting a bow on this, I gotta ask because obviously this is a very, and this is a bit of a loaded question, but bear with me because it's obviously a very sort of female-centric driven film. But at least to me as a guy, it did not feel that way. It felt very humanistic more than anything. When you're telling
Mm.
a story like this, which has intimacy issues, which has, female characters sort of I don't want to say exposing themselves, but sort of giving sort of very raw performances that aren't necessarily in the traditional meld. How important
Mhm.
is it for you to sort of, I don't want to say stay true to that, but I mean, I can imagine make sure you're not steering the ship into something a bit more conventional. Because to me,
Mhm.
the honesty here was what was so unconventional.
Oh, that's nice to hear. Yeah, I mean, that's the most important thing to me. And in characters like Sean, played by Peter Mooney, it's like you can so easily paint those in a black and white way, you
Right.
know, as like the bad guy. But you know what I talked about with Peter a lot was like, well, in the movie of Sean, like this is what's happening because nobody is the bad guy in their own mind.
Yeah.
And I think even, you know, when I look back at, you know, times when I was a teenager having relationships with boys and things, it was like before we had all this cultural talk about like after the Me Too movement and about consent and about um you know it's not like they were being malicious
Right.
or you know it's like everybody's sort of struggling and it's like can be a messy situation and like the power dynamics can shift and things can change and it's slippery and like hard to hold on to and people aren't this like one thing or the other and yet it's that like messiness that I'm really interested in.
Love it. Love it. Now, just to put a bow on this, I got to ask because obviously, when I talk to filmmakers, especially from the first timers, the second one always feels like it's going to be daunting, and they don't necessarily want to think about it right away. Now you've
Uh-huh.
done the second one. Is it less daunting? Do you have ideas percolating, or did sort of that sort of daunting idea of mounting a production still sort of sit in your head a little bit?
Yeah, no, it's less daunting because it feels I mean, I think my nervous system has adjusted to it.
Right, right,
You
right.
know, like it feels more
It's
like
muscle
normal
memory
to
at this
me.
point. Yeah.
No, but I just feel like I don't feel like I'm gonna die
Right.
now when I think about like making my next movie, which I'm making a movie in the fall called Stranger in Town in BC that Patrick Whistler wrote. So it's my first time directing something that somebody else wrote. But yeah, I mean, I am nervous and I definitely will not be sleeping well like the weeks leading up to production starting. But, in my other films, that was like 6 months out that I couldn't sleep. So, it's like just letting it become more of an integrated part of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Melanie, I can't wait to see the next one. And I mean, you've made a beautiful piece of work here, and I can't wait for more people to see it. But again, thank you for the insight and the time today. I really appreciate it. And just congrats again.
Thanks so much. It was a lovely chat.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.